to the Black and Raw podcast. I'm your host, Tino Kuda Tondarai Vunzalbai, and I'm not going to repeat that. Here's a podcast that's creating the dialogue and the space for black men to be their most authentic selves. Now, just a little disclaimer before I start the episode. As you can hear, I sound a bit rough. I don't know if I look rough. Do I look rough? You can tell me if I look rough in the comments. I'll take the hazing. But I had a wedding on the weekend, but then also I had a flu as well. So margarita, parties, lack of sleep resulted in this voice, in my sexy Idris Elba voice. So just a little disclaimer. But in the episode I also sound ill too. But it was alright. It's all good. You gotta do what you gotta do. You know what I'm saying? So, but let me tell you about my guest. My guest is Kwamane Harris, and Kwamane Harris works in the social care settings in the US, and he's worked with foster children, with kids on the edge of care. He's done quite a bit, and he comes onto the podcast to talk about his book, Pushing the Generation Forward, about how you can live your purpose through the next generation and setting up the next generation so they can really thrive as adults and as young people and just thrive in their life. And Kwame's mission, I think, is really noble, and it aligns a lot with what we do here at Black and Raw. I say we, it's just me currently, but soon, maybe not soon, but it'll be a we. Eventually it'll be a we, you know. Gotta become a big little organization, but it aligns with what we do here at Black and Raw in terms of wanting to empower young black men into being who they want to be and how they can thrive. And, you know, we talk about building intergenerational wealth. He talks about setting up his children for success, and how his story, he doesn't want his children and other children to have to go through that. You'll hear a bit more about what Kwame had to do at college, how he had to survive, and to see where he is now is a great feat. And so we talk about so many interesting things in the episode. We talk about young people, we talk about what they're going through, how can they trust us, how can we build relationships with them, how can we support them. We talk about the stages of change and how change is not easy, you know, even for adults, how change is not easy. So for young people, it's even harder. And I can actually, let me give you a little snippet actually of what you got to look forward to in this episode. So we're just gonna switch.
The book is understanding that relationship that you have with that young person, they will never forget that. They'll never forget those moments. And that relationship that you have with a young person, and the lessons and the things that the young person learned from you in that relationship, will not only impact that person that you're working with, the young person, but it'll impact the generations to come that comes from the young person. And so one thing that I've discovered, or one thing that I've, you know, that I've had to come to the conclusion on, and this took a while, let me just say, that I'm not, and that's the conclusion of I'm not in control. Like, all I can do when it comes to certain things is advocate and support, teach, find different ways to apply what I'm teaching. But outside of that, I don't have any control, right? I have no control over the systems that, I do have control over that, by advocating, but I don't have a control over the choices that the people I work with make. Mm-hmm. I went with some clothes, and I went with a toiletry set, which was a toothbrush carrier, a little trash can, and then like a little soap holder.
Yeah.
And that's it. I didn't have books. Mm. I didn't have books, didn't have laptops, none of that, right? All those things, I come from a very modest home, and so like we couldn't afford those things. My mom and father had 3 kids, and so they were trying to get me through college, where they had other 2 in high school.
Yeah,
and so I went to college with just no books, no laptops, just pencil and paper and some clothes. No idea what that. No one ever told me like what I needed for college. It was like, this is what I went with. And so like a lot of that is around discovering and trying to figure out how to survive in the moments. There have been a lot of times when, especially in those moments where you do want to give up, You're like, man, I'm tired.
So now that you've got a little bit of a snippet of what you've got to look forward to in this episode, before we get started, I just wanted to say thank you very much for listening. Thank you for all your support. If you want to get in touch with me or with Kwame, all my links will be in the show notes, so you can go and check that out. And yeah, I don't think I have much more to say to you guys, other than I really hope you enjoy this conversation. Please like and subscribe. And yeah, here is my conversation with Kwamane Harris. So Kwame, welcome to the Black and Raw podcast. It's really good to have you on.
Absolutely. Thanks, man. It's good to be here. Super Bowl Sunday, and we're doing this. We're doing this. Super Bowl Sunday. Who you got winning?
You know what? I don't even know as much about. Is it Eagles in Philadelphia that's in it? It's in the finals.
It's the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Kansas City Chiefs, and so it's two different. There's two teams.
Two teams
that'll be in there. So yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know much on American football, but who do you think is winning? Who do you think is gonna edge it out?
I'm a Jalen Hurts fan, man. So I'm hoping that Jalen Hurts can pull it out, and this Philadelphia Eagles can be the Super Bowl champions this year.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm pretty sure that the football is not as big as it is here as it is there. So
yeah,
that's kind of like asking me who's gonna win the
Premier League or something.
Yeah. No idea.
To be fair, I watch a lot of NBA, so if it was an NBA question, I definitely would have been able to answer it for you.
All right. Okay. Well, we can do that at some other time. Then. You should have told me you were an NBA fan.
Oh yeah, that's what I should have started. But yeah, no. So my audience would have, I would have given them a little bit of snippet about you. But I wanted to ask, you work in social care, and in various settings. I guess just to start off with something sort of light and positive, like what are some of, I guess, your favorite memories or things that have stood out to you while working with children and young people?
Great question, man. One of the things that I always think about is, as a quote I always say, all learning is understanding relationships, and no significant learning can happen without a significant relationship. And so when it comes to working with young people, like all of my favorite memories revolve around or are around relationships.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is just the opportunity to be a person in their life that can champion them, that can advocate for them, that can have fun with them, that can talk with them in those tough times. And so, all my memories are around that. Having young people come up to you and just say, "Hey, I want to be like you," and then they never would have had that if, you didn't have that relationship with them. And so I believe, in all my memories and all the things, and one memory in particular, I had a young man who was going through some tough stuff, man. In the after school program, in school, teachers were calling every day, principal was calling every day, and he was going home and giving his mom a hard time, and he was, getting violent, slamming things, and I started working with a young person. And I built a relationship with him, and then I think almost a year later, working with a young person, he's like, all the things that I've been through, like you've been the only person in my life that has been a champion for me. It's like, a person like that who actually listened to me, who hear what I had to say, and so I was able to get far more out of this young person than any individual that I've been working with them, because I took time to have a relationship.
Yeah.
And so then I was a young kid that said, "I want to be like you when I grow up," and I'm like, "Oh man," but it's just I have had young people, go to college. You had young people who were, doing terrible in school. I mean, terrible. Just we're able to help them turn it around, and they're holding master's degrees, and then call me saying, "Mr. Harris," I'm not that much older than them. Like I'm older, but I'm not that much older than for them to.
You need to keep telling yourself that.
Yeah, I feel old when that happens, right? When they do that, but like Mr. Harris, I got a master's in education, or I'm doing this work because of you. And so those are the moments that I cherish. As those are the priceless moments. Those moments don't come often.
Yeah.
As they should, right? Because young people have different lives, and we all have different lives, and we go different ways. But I think for the most part of that is it's those crucial moments when there can be a relationship, but also I can be able to hear how that relationship impacted that young person.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? That's sort of the crux of the work, isn't it? Like, there's loads of stuff like relationship-based practice in terms of building a relationship with the young person, and
Yeah,
it's easier to sort of help with change and stuff. But I think that is sort of the essential part of working with young people because, as you said, they maybe got stuff going on at home, or school's not going too well, and so they sort of just need that person to like, can you help me? Like talking about things, doing things they love as well, spending time with them because they maybe don't have that at home. Um, and so yeah, I think those are always the best parts. I remember
yeah.
when I was doing my placement with a fostering agency, they wanted me to go and pick up this boy from school and take him back and stuff like that. And we were able just to chat in the car, play music together. Like on the Friday, I had my basketball in the back, and it was like, "Oh, can we play basketball?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure thing. That sounds like fun." And so we were just outside and we're dribbling around each other, trying to keep the ball and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the foster parents had said to me that like, "Oh, you were able to build a relationship with the kid in like 3 days, more than the social worker was able to do, and he couldn't stop talking about you and raving about you." And it's
Mm-hmm.
just like something as small as that, like a kid is like, "Oh my gosh, like that's really good to have. That's really fun. I can
Yeah,
trust them. I can hang out with them." And yeah, it's a beautiful part of it, I will say.
yeah. And I for I'll say a couple of things. One, if for people who are working with young people and they get extremely frustrated, I've seen a lot of people who work with young people and they've been like, they can't they they're thinking a young person should be doing this and that, and they're extremely frustrated by their lack of progress or lack of choices, or I'm sorry, or the choices that they've made. And there's always one common trend that comes to when people who work with young people, where they get the most stuck, and it's just it is relationships.
Mm.
Like I can tell you the person that I can tell you that the person that they are, um, the person that has the most trouble, it always goes back to, well, what kind of relationship do you have with a young person? And you go back and you look at it, and they really don't have a relationship with the young person. So, and like I said earlier, all learning is understanding relationships. No significant learning can happen without a significant relationship. And so when you think about the young people, that you're struggling with, is because you probably don't have a relationship with them. An authentic, trusting, rapport building relationship is what I mean. And I talk about this, and I don't know if your readers know, or if your listeners know, I recently published my first book called Pushing the Generations Forward. And
Congratulations, by the way.
thanks, I appreciate that, man.
It's good, it's good.
But one of the things I talk about in the book is understanding that relationship that you have with that young person, they will never forget that. They'll never forget those moments. And that relationship that you have with a young person, and the lessons and the things that the young person learned from you in that relationship, will not only impact that person that you're working with, the young person, but it'll impact the generations to come that comes from the young person. And so now the lessons that you taught that person and the type of relationship that you built with the young person, they can then pass that type of relationship on to their children, and then to their children's children. So like our significant impact when it comes to relationship is not just right now in the present, but it has future implications for generations to come.
Yeah.
So you know that's how important it is, man.
No, it hugely is. And if you even think about your own relationships, like with your parents or with your uncles or aunties, the good stuff that is modeled by them, you also see yourself repeating it.
Yep.
Some people are always like, "Oh, I'm doing what my dad used to do, or I used to do what my mom used to do," and when you modeled a good role model, then you're definitely going to be like, we're always watching and learning through observation, aren't we? And through, doing what you mean and your actions. And for those young people that don't have those people in their lives, having somebody that can show them, okay, this is how we be accountable. This is, just how you budget, something simple, or even just making sure you know where to get mental health support from and stuff. It's those things which you don't even realize go a long way. I think the impact, and you know what is really saddening, the fact that I think within this profession is usually, like, I mean, I can only speak for the UK, but for us, the services are underfunded and professionals don't get the time and don't get the space to build those relationships. There are some children where you probably need to see them more often and sit down with them and be able to chat, but you don't have the time because you're filling out casework and things like that. Mm-hmm. So it's quite hard, because to have that impact, as you're saying, there has to be a lot of other things also that are helping you make that impact as well. I don't know, what's it like in the US?
Same. I mean, same. Yeah. I mean, I think we're doing a really good job now with the new administration, and just with how we think about our young people now. We know that they need a lot more than what we've been giving them, and so I think there's a push. And I want to speak to the efforts and the progress that many advocates are doing in America. To really push the needle on really trying to figure out ways to meet the needs of our young people. Through advocacies, through funding, through all those things, and I think we are turning the tide, or we're trying to turn the tide on how we can put dollars in the right amount in the right places, so that we can make sure young people are getting what they need to get. I think the biggest thing about that is, I mean, there are a lot of ways we can do that, right? Because if you think about how we understand how young people develop, and you think about how the brain science goes into that, like most of the programs, and I'm not sure if this is a thing in the UK, but most of the programs who are working with at-risk youth, or high-risk youth, or youth who experience trauma, youth who've experienced, all the generational curses, who've experienced all that hurt, or whatever they experience in their lifetime, right? Because, whether it's oppression, whether it's racism, whatever, right? All those things that a child can go through, or a poor person can go through in a lifetime. And most of the programs are designed, like, you think about criminal justice, you think about nonprofit, they're designed for young people who are in action. What I mean by that is, when you think about the stages of change, you have the different stages of change is when young people are ready to actually make a step into actually doing the things that they need to do to improve the outcomes, but also improve their lives. And so you have the first stage of the stages of change is like the pre stage. I call it the pre stage, which is really, you're not really ready for change. You're not really ready for anything right now. Right now, you're just here, right? And for lack of a better version, this moment. And so, how do we get you from that first stage of, I don't want to do anything, I don't see the need to do anything, to the stage of the action where, okay, I need to be doing something. But most of the programs are designed for that stage, in I need to be doing something, and the young people aren't ready for that.
Oh yeah,
they aren't ready for they aren't ready for that action stage. They're not even thinking about changes. Yeah. They don't see anything wrong with the changes. They're in a whole different mode. And so they're in that pre-stage. And what we learn is it takes time to get our young people to move from that. I call it it's called pre-contemplation. And then you have different stages in between that, and then you have action. So there's a process that you have to get your young people to, so that they're actually ready for action. They're actually ready for change in their life. They're actually ready to go to college. They're actually ready to change their behavior. They're actually ready for all those things. But they're not going to do that starting off. And like you think about criminal justice systems, when you sanction a kid or when you sentence a kid, or you say, hey, you're on probation, you got to go to this many classes, do this community service, and do all these things. And if you do all these things, you can get out for probation. Well, that's a young person. That's a young person sentence. That's a young person who has to be ready for action, who has to be ready to do those things in order to get off probation. But if they're not even understanding that, if they're not even ready to do any of those things, they're not going to make that change. It takes time, and so we should think about ways to help our young people understand the different stages of changes, and then understand like how long that actually take. Like it takes 6 months to build an authentic relationship with a young person. So that's not even getting you to the action phase yet.
Yeah.
You know, and so
a lot of time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot of time. It's a lot of time, and it's not just paperwork. It's not just case management. Like it's building relationship, to getting them to actually trust you.
Yeah, spending time with them, like sort of without sort of wanting to just automatically, because these children go through some traumatic things in their lives as well. Like they're just surviving really, as you're saying, in their pre-stage. And for someone to be able to be like, okay, this is what happened to me, for me to be vulnerable with them. You know, people are in relationships for years and are never vulnerable with their spouse. Yeah, you're asking a kid to release all their trauma and to relive their memories, to tell you something which maybe they don't even trust you, because either, like here we have a high staff turnover of social workers. I'm sure it's probably similar there. So like these kids are probably like, you might not even be here in a month. Why am I going to bear my soul out to you? Like I wouldn't. I understand why they wouldn't. You don't want to just be telling any Tom, Dick, and Harry about your business, you know. So yeah, it's important to be able to get that time to be like, listen, I'm going to be here. You can rely on me, because they also need people to know that if you're reliable, you're going to be here. You're going to say what you do. You're going to do what you say. And so, yeah, it's an essential part. And I like that pre-stages in terms of helping them change. I think as well, when someone has just been living in what they know to be true, you've got to, one, sort of show them why it's not necessarily true, or why it's not necessarily normal for a young person in this certain circumstance. But then also there's other stuff which needs to be dealt with. As you're saying, if a kid is going to probation, is going to be sentenced, there's something that led to that behavior.
Yeah.
But it's not going to get tackled in parole. And like sometimes it's appropriate, but then majority of the time it's not. Or like, at least if they're in parole and now getting other services alongside it to sort of help them unpack that. Yeah. Then that's sort of what you need then. But if you're not getting down to the nooks and crannies, you're never going to know why. And it's hard to change too.
Yeah, it's very hard to change. And people aren't, people aren't robots, man. They're not going to change that between night and day. And this is not just true for young people, but this is true for adults.
Yeah.
Like no matter how old you are, you're not. These things take time. Like a lot of our people don't trust the systems. Like systems can be flawed. Systems can cause hurt, no matter who you are, right? And I think the biggest thing to take away from that is like trust has to be built. Even within systems, even with young people, but also with adults. It's very important. And if we can understand that as a base, then we can actually look at our programming. We can actually look at our laws and and how we do social work or how we do all those things, and look at, okay, how much time is really realistic, and then also to how can I incorporate these other things. And I think a lot of social workers, are doing that. A lot of departments are doing like, what else do you need, right? Because I know it just can't be. I know a lot of juvenile services are doing that. Like I know a lot of adult program services are doing. Like, what else do you need so that we can not only tackle the issue at hand, but also tackle the why, which is also important.
Yeah, no, 100%. Because then when you focusing on the why is going to then help you change the behavior and then do all the things you want to do. I wanted to sort of ask, you're working with young people now and stuff like that, and I know COVID probably had a lot of big impacts on them. But I guess what are you sort of seeing with young people? Like, what is going on for them in the places that you're working and you're visiting and stuff?
I think for young people, it hasn't really changed. Like it's a new way of doing things. Like you have, um, you know, you know, you have everything's, everything's on the computer now, on social media, all those things. But what we know now is, there's I haven't really seen things change with the young people, but I've seen things change with the funding around how to help young people.
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest change I've seen since the pandemic. Like, there's more money going into these social services or human services agencies to really help the communities that are at risk. Not just the young people, but the parents, right? And I think there's a little bit more targeted services around those things that I thought the pandemic, in a way, can kind of help. And so, like, in honestly, the George Floyd situation that came out. I'm sorry, the killing of George Floyd. I want to be give, and I think that was also where a lot of the money start flowing in with social justice, because with George Floyd, just highlighting that we need to do something different. Young people are streaming. We need to do something different. And so I think, that's the biggest thing that I've seen. Because I don't think anything has changed really around young people. Our young people need services. Our young people are growing up in some very very traumatic situations. Our young people are dying early, whether it's a suicide, gang violence. Our young people are getting arrested. Our young people are being involved in foster care systems. Like, all those things are still the same, post pandemic or before the pandemic. I just think there's a little bit more of a understanding about how we navigate services for young people.
Yeah,
As far as in terms of the funding.
and I think with young people as well, maybe why we're seeing a lot more sort of need for services and stuff. I think the world has always sort of had its issues, but I don't think the world has ever had such access to know what those issues are. Like with social media and stuff like that, like you and Twitter, you probably can't go on social media and not know what's happening in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all the scary things which you wouldn't, if you didn't want to know about it, you just don't. Like back in the day, you just don't watch the news or you don't read the paper. But now everyone has a phone in their hand. You have notifications. You have social media. So there's a lot more awareness of, okay, there's a lot more awareness of things that can impact your mental health. And that's probably why the services are now even more needed than probably before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the media has a way of bringing those things out, right? Media has a way of just highlighting, especially now more so than ever, just the differences and also the similarities that we all have, we all experience across the world, not just in America, but across the world, not just in the UK, but across the world. And so I think mental health, is one of those things where we are, again, we've always, young people, adults, we've always had mental health as an issue. I think now, again, it's where we are looking at more of a different stance towards funding around it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I wanted to touch on mental health, but actually maybe take it like a little bit differently in terms of that. Like, what is sort of your mental health like in such a job, like working with children? Because I know when we did a lot of our training, there was a lot on resilience and having mental fortitude and having empathy, and you can have empathy fatigue because of the stuff you listen to day in and day out. It wears heavy on your heart.
Yeah.
And then you've also got to make decisions which could either be not life threatening, but there might be a child where you're like, I need to take them out of this situation, but you don't know what's going to happen. You could either make the situation worse thinking you're doing better, but then if you leave them there, then you don't know what's going to happen. And you can't really because of how we work. So yeah. How about you? What's your feels on that?
In this line of work, one thing that I've discovered, or one thing that I've had to come to, I've had to come to the conclusion on, and this took a while. Let me just say that I'm not, and that's the conclusion of I'm not in control. Like, all I can do when it comes to certain things is advocate and support, teach, find different ways to apply what I'm teaching. But outside of that, I don't have any control. Right. I have no control over the systems that well, I do have control over that, by advocating, but I don't have a control over the choices that the people I work with make.
Mm-hmm.
All my job is to deal with the choices that they make, but I have no control over the choices they make. And although I want to be optimistic for my clients, I want to be optimistic for the systems that play into, that play into the hurting of my clients. But in those two ways, you have the system, then you have the client, and they all let you down in some way, right? And some of these things I don't have control over. I don't have control over the 8th relapse, right? All I can do is, well, how do we deal with this? How can I support you in dealing with this so that the 9th time you actually won't relapse? Or how do even the systems, like I don't have control over some of the policies and procedures that folks make. All I can do is like, hey, advocate for why this needs to be changed and figure out ways where we can do that. But again, knowing that if I don't have the control over the powers that be in that moment or in that system, I gotta be able to let it go. And I gotta be able to understand that I don't have control, and I need to be able to understand that's my limitations is right here, and as far as outside of that, there's nothing I can do for that. There's nothing else I can do. It's hard to accept that. It's hard to accept that when you're working with humans, you do not have control over what they do.
We wish you do, but you don't.
You wish you do, right? You wish you could tell them to do something and they do it, and they believe it and they went. You don't. But they're their own humans, and they've been living their life far longer than you have been knowing them. And so all you can do is provide support, coaching, and advocate for them in those sense where they need to be advocated for. But that's it. And I think a lot of times when you see someone who's burnt out in the system, they care, and that's great. But they want them to do, and they want their clients to make the changes that they want them to make right then and there. But you don't have the control over that. Yes. All you can do is, there's an old saying here is like, you can lead a horse to the water, but you cannot make the horse drink. Right. And so that's really what this work is about. You can lead it to the water and understand that horse, it may not drink. You can lead it. And I hate that. I don't want to, but we understand that. I want to be, I'm not trying to be, it's an analogy here, right? But with our clients, you can tell our clients how to get success. You can tell our clients how to do things that will benefit them.
But they got to do
But it's only up to them to apply it.
No, 100%.
Once you understand that, and once you understand that, that's how it is, and you never will have that control, it makes things a little less easier.
It's liberating.
It makes things easy. It makes things easier to be able to know that I'm going to do all I can for you, but the choice is still yours.
Yeah. No, it's liberating to a certain extent, isn't it? Because when you listen, I can't, as you've been saying, you can't control what people are going to do. But if you're there sort of being like, let them do it now, they don't do it. You get so high, and then you come so low, sort of when you are like, this didn't happen, this happened again, they haven't done this, the system's let me down this way, the funding has been taken. Like only focusing on what you can control just means, right, listen, I've done my job. I can't control what others do. It's not even worth it anyway, like trying to use up all the energy, because it will just get sapped. And then you're then feeling burnt out, and like you can't do your job, because it sounds awful because you've cared way too much about the uncontrollables. I think that's a good place. Like everyone sort of needs to get to that, and I think it's a analogy for life, isn't it? Really, that you can only control what you can control,
Yeah.
There's no point in getting too stressed over what you can't control. It's
Yeah.
unnecessary stress. There's
Yeah.
enough stresses in life
That's true, man.
to get stressed over unnecessary stress.
That's true. And I can barely control what I got going on most of the time, let alone somebody else trying to control them, and control what choices they make. And I think it is liberating. Like you said, it's liberating because once you understand that, you know that you care, but there's only so much you can do.
Mm.
And that's not trying to be less optimistic, but what is being real about humans, about who we are as humans. I expect you, to relapse. I expect you to make mistakes. But if you don't, if every time a person makes a mistake and you get let down, well, you they're still that was their choice to make, and they made a choice, and that's okay. And then the consequences may not be okay, but again, whether or not they make a choice or not, we still got to deal with whatever it is.
Yeah.
We still got to deal with what's going on right here, right now. And so I think that's important to. It helps you do this work on a balanced level for
Definitely.
Sure.
And like I think people have like there's a reason why some people make choices. There's always an explanation or there's past evidence of what's led to this. So it's like if I lived that life, would I be if I lived that life and you person that I don't even know is telling me this is what needs to change, like I'm probably still going to make the same decision as I would if I was them, because you have to get to that point where you want the change, but then there's a lot of other stuff going on behind it, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And all you can do in the moment is really help them with the skills. So when they come, I call it critical thinking skills, but help them with the skills that they need in that moment to be able to critically think, so they can make an informed choice. Right? They can still, like I said, they can still make a choice. Like they can still decide to do whatever they want to do. But like at least in that moment, I have the skills. I have the critical thinking skills to be able to say, okay, let me think holistically about this before I make that decision. That's it.
Yeah.
And if they do that, that's a win. And whether they choose to do whether they choose the right choice or maybe they're not so great choice, that's fine. But again, all I can do is help you understand the choices that you're making, and you can choose whether or not you want to make those, if you want to make a different choice.
Yeah. Are there any sort of things that you do to like sort of recharge and reset, and sort of like when you are feeling quite compassion fatigue or burnt out, like what sort of helps you sort of recharge?
I think self-care.
Yeah.
I mean, I immediately like your life can't be about caring for other people. That's just truth. Your entire life cannot be about caring for other people, and that's where your existence lie. Find purpose, find a little bit more of find a different type of purpose that aligns with your purpose. Because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
No.
Like, I can't charge someone else's battery if my battery is dead. I can't hook a car up, a dead battery car to another dead battery car and expect something to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And so, being constant about that recharging, finding ways to practice self-care so that you can so you can come back and be the best that you can be for this work. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. I remember I had because I work with 16 to 18-year-olds. And so I remember I had a really long week, and me and my cousin we went for a walk in the park together, and we were just chatting about our weeks. And like afterwards, I was just like, geez, you don't even realize how heavy of a week you've had, or all the stories that you've been told.
Yeah.
And then when you unload that out, you're like, wow, like, damn. Yeah. Like I felt a lot that week, and during the week I didn't feel like I felt a lot, but now that I've had time to like de-stress and just be outside and go for some walks, like it's that nice relief, that self-care, as you were saying, because and that recharges. I think that was sort of a recharge as well, being able to just express it all out and sort of get that sort of, I guess, natural high from being out in nature and stuff.
Yeah, and I think you gotta be able to do those things, right? You like some like it's just nice to to give yourself a mental break because what we do is heavy, like you said. What we do is it involves so much compassion and we care about the people we care about the people that we're working with, but we can't care about them more than we care about ourselves because then in turn we're not really caring about them or we're not really caring about them. We're caring what I messed that up. What I'm saying is we can't care about people more than they care. We can't care about people more than we care about ourselves. Because in turn, if we're not taking care of ourselves, then we really can't care for the people that we're working with.
Yeah, as you're saying, you can't pour from an empty cup, can you?
You can't.
Yeah.
You can try. You can try, but if you ain't got it, if you got nothing left, you have nothing left, and you got to be aware of that. You got to be aware that when I just don't have it, and I got to be able to say, okay, I understand. I got nothing else for you. No disrespect to anybody else. I'm drained. I'm burned. I can't pour from an empty cup right now, so I need to step away and get more. And we gotta be able to say that as adults.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, especially. I wanted to ask a bit more about you and also your book as well. Yeah. When we were talking, you were saying that that you're a first generation graduate and first generation professional as well. And you know what? It's always being from Zimbabwe and being in England. I think I've never known sort of if you be, and I do know some people in England that you are first generation professional, but I don't know whether it's in the US because you've had black US not relatives, but like uncles and aunts and grandparents that probably maybe just would have came out of slavery or would have been in Jim Crow era and wouldn't have been able to thrive and stuff like that. I think it's always interesting when you do have first generation graduates and like, what is that feeling like in terms of being like, right, I'm the first person to sort of do this in my family. And what is that like, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, it is. I'll talk about it in two ways. I'll talk about the journey and then I'll talk about the destination of actually, of actually becoming that first generation professional, first generation college student. When you think about the journey, like it was not easy. Being the first of anything, like you think about all the different pioneers who were the first. Jackie Robinson was the first. All these different, people who were the first, they all went through something. Frederick Douglass was the first. They've all went through something, and it was very hard, very, very hard for them to be able to do that. And I went from trying to maintain financially because it was that was probably the hardest part, trying to make sure I had to save up, I had to work 3 jobs every year so I can pay for college, cleaning toilets, refereeing, all those just different things that I could do to make extra money so I could pay for school. And growing up, my freshman year, I went with some clothes and I went with a toiletry set, which was a toothbrush carrier, a little trash can, and then like a little soap holder.
Yeah.
And that's it. I didn't have books. I didn't have books, didn't have laptops, none of that. Right. All those things, I come from a very modest home. And so like we couldn't afford those things. My mom and father had 3 kids. And so, they were trying to get me through college where they had other 2 in high school.
Yeah.
And so, I went to college with just no books, no laptops, just pencil and paper and some clothes. No idea what that. No one ever told me like what I needed for college. I was like, this is what I went with. And so like a lot of that is around discovering and trying to figure out how to survive in the moments. There have been a lot of times when, especially in those moments where you do want to give up. You're like, man, I'm tired. I can't do this.
I mean, 3 jobs and college. It's a lot, isn't it? It's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot for anybody, right?
Yeah.
And I actually had to sit out a semester because I couldn't afford it. And then my uncle, randomly called me one day and said, "Hey, I'm gonna pay for." It was like $1,600. He's like, "Hey, I'm gonna pay for it so you can go back to school." And I went back the next semester. and then got and I got I ended up graduating. But man,
What a
for that,
guy.
but for that semester I had to go back. I couldn't afford. I still couldn't afford to live on campus, so I was living with some friends, and then sometimes I have to like sleep in my car during breaks because going back and forth was a little bit tough, and so I pulled to a Walmart and go sleep in my car.
And go
It's
sleep,
very,
yeah.
so it was take a shower. I mean, I take a bath at the rest stop, all those things, and go to work. That was hard. That was very hard. And I think being the journey in itself of being the first of anything is very hard. It was very tough, and I say for most people, like it's often you do want to give up. You do want to give up in that time, like you really do. And like I wouldn't say that, I knew I wanted to be a first generation college student. I mean, graduate, but I didn't know how hard it was going to be. And but now that I've done that, it's so daunting. But now that I've done that, man, I think it's worth it. It was totally worth it because my children, and I talk about this in the book, like my children will never know what it's like to not go to college, to go to a college campus that way. My children will never know what it's like to make sure that you understand the type of college you're going to. I went to a private school, but didn't know I was going to a private school or what that actually meant until my first semester there. I thought all colleges were, my mom, my parents, I mean, we all thought that all colleges were the same. You go with student loans and they pay for it. I didn't recognize that a state school or a public institution is cheaper than a private institution. And so I went to a private institution thinking that that's how it always worked. It's not that. So my children will, what I'm saying? My children will never have to go through that. We're going to actually have these discussions. We're going to actually, my job is to prepare them for that, for when that happens. They're going to go with books. They're going to go with laptops. They're going to go whatever they need to succeed in college. I don't want them to be, survival mode their entire college career. No, I wanted them to enjoy it, but also want them to get what they really came to get out of college.
Yeah, definitely. You're sort of setting them on the best platform to sort of thrive at college. And go on.
No, and I would say that, and that's what the book is about, right? That's what pushing the generations forward is about. Like, it's not about the money. Sometimes, like, wealth is great and building capital is great, right? And that helps change generations, especially in your generational line. But those moments also help. Those moments, preparing them with the knowledge they need to be successful, is pushing the generations forward. And I do whatever and I want to make sure that I pass on that knowledge because it's important. Like the journey it took for me to become a first generation college student should not be the same journey that they take being second generation, third generation college students. And so, because someone's already paved the way. Someone's already paved the way. Jackie Robinson paved the way for many other Black baseball players. And so it was hard for him, but he paved the way. I'm not saying it's going to be easy.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be as hard.
No, definitely. It helps you sort of, like, as you were saying, you're surviving through college. So your children can now, like, thrive through college and feel like, okay, I don't have to, like, because you must have been shattered working 3 jobs and then having to now study, and do all of that, where your kids can, if they want a job and to get that responsibility, they can do, and they can choose their hours and be flexible with it because they're able to, have that platform where if I need to study, I need to study, you know what I mean? Like, I don't need to then go, I would have been, if I was you, I would have been falling asleep through all my lectures doing 3 jobs, like, so it's definitely good. I think, as you were saying, it's hard, isn't it? But like, you've been able to pave the way for your children as well. How old are your kids?
I don't have any kids yet.
Oh, I thought you said you had kids.
Oh, no, I don't have any kids yet, and that's the beauty of pushing generations forward, because this mentality developed in me early on before I even had kids. I just know when I do have kids, I have to set them up for success. I have to put them in a better position than what I was in. Like my mom, she didn't go to college. My stepfather, they didn't go to college, but they did push the generations forward because they put me in a position where I can take it to the next level. I can take it further than they did, right? And that's what it's all about. But I don't have kids yet, but I know when I do have kids, which is in the plan, like they're gonna be okay.
Yeah,
they're gonna be okay because
good.
I decided in myself to push to push the generations forward, because I believe it's necessary.
Yeah,
and I believe that and I talk about this in the book. Pushing the generations forward is about finding purpose through the next generation. What that really means is my impact on my children will have impact on my children's children. And so, what I'm doing and how I'm navigating and setting myself up is not just for my children, but for my grandchildren.
Yeah.
I don't even have children yet, and that's how we got to move up, and that's how we got, especially when when you've gone through so much in your life, when you've had to endure and pick up great resilience, and you've had to go through trauma, you've had to go through oppression, all those things, right? Not my children. Not my children. They might go through those things, but not. But it would have significantly less impact because I've paved the way for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've teased your book enough, to be honest. And I think you're just gonna have to tell us more about it. How was it writing it? So where did your inspiration sort of come from to write the book?
Yeah, when I first wrote the idea of pushing the generations forward happened at 8 years old. I didn't understand. Like I didn't quite coin it that way or put it in that phrase, but I knew I wanted to be someone in my family that can take care of my family based on what I was seeing growing up. Based on what I was seeing in my family line, I was like, no more. It stops with me. I'm going to make it better for the next generation.
Yeah.
And at 8 years old, I decided that.
Start early.
Yes, absolutely. Like, 8 years old, you usually think about playing, and not me. I mean, I did play, and but
you do.
I was like, I'm going to focus. Yeah, I'm going to focus a little bit more on trying to figure out what to do to get my family in a better situation. And at 8 years old, there were a lot of things that I thought at that time it would be football. Didn't make it to the NFL, that's for sure. Didn't make it past Division III of football, but Division III football, which is a college lower level.
Yeah, you're D2 and D1, don't you?
Yeah. I was in D3, so football obviously wasn't my way into the game. But although football wasn't it, I found empowerment in education, and I saw that path of education to become the way I pushed the generations forward. And so, I started to, when I got in college, I really got serious about my grades, got serious about how to, get that college degree. And so at 8 years old, I just knew I would do something. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I worked hard at it, whatever I was doing. Like I worked hard at football when I thought it was going to be football. When I realized it wasn't going to be football, I worked hard on my education. And that inspired me and that kept me going. And that kept me staying in college when I really wanted to quit. They kept me, it kept me at 8 years old. Well, I was actually sleeping with the football because weird, I know, but I slept with the football by my side because I thought that football was going to be my meal ticket. And so, whatever I go hard at because I know this is my path of changing generation.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, sorry, go on.
I think no, I was asking you last question. I mean, it was tough. It was tough writing because I never saw myself as a writer. I'm not writing a book. Like I'm.
You're like, I'm doing it.
Yeah, I ain't doing it. And then and after I got my master's degree, I was like, it's time.
I gotta do it. I just wrote 2 dissertations, undergraduate, masters.
Yeah,
what's a book?
Yeah, pretty much. It's just a beginning there, right? But I was like, you know what? It's time because I want people to know that I know there's people, and I've interacted with so many people who've gone through something similar, or who are going through maybe something worse or not as bad, but they've lacked purpose, because based on what they experience, cause their vision to be blurry when it comes to purpose. And what I wanted to do is like, hey, I know life has been tough, and I know that you've gone through a lot in your lifetime, and just this short time, or in this long period, and you go through a lot in life, and no matter what time it is. But what I do know is, and I can't tell you, why. I can't tell you why you had to go through those things. I can't tell you, why people showed up, why people didn't show up in your life, why people hurt you. I can't. But I'm sorry for that. But what I can tell you is that you can still find purpose in your life. And your purpose can be, if you choose to, your purpose can be pushing the generations forward. Your purpose can be to make sure that your children, or any child that you work with, will never have to endure what you had to endure. Right? That can be your purpose. Because we've all made mistakes and we've all gone through a lot, but that is purpose when you can realize that I'm not doing this for me. I'm not battling, I'm not getting out of depression for me. I'm not battling the trauma just for me. I'm not, creating better boundaries just for me. I'm not trying to achieve what I'm trying to achieve just for me. I'm doing it so that my children and my children's children will have a better life. And so I thought that was imperative to get out and get the message across, because I think sometimes life can be tough.
No, definitely.
And in that toughness, we lose our purpose. And if we can find our purpose, it gives us it gives us a reason to keep going. It gives us a reason to get up in the morning. Which is important.
It is. And we started off talking about sort of some of the stuff that children face and the experiences of those in care systems and foster care systems. And we like intergenerational trauma and can have such a lasting impact. But we've also talked about intergenerational wealth in terms of that building for the future. But then, like, I was just, as you were talking, I was thinking of like, with like intergenerational wealth, we only ever think about money, assets, and other stuff. But I think what you're teaching is intergenerational wealth in like your social settings, and like how you engage the world, how you are confident, what you learn about, how you're going to teach people integrity, how you're going to teach your kids important stuff in life that's going to make sure that they then also are able to get that intergenerational wealth for themselves in every sense of their life, in their money, in their relationships, in their life, living life to the fullest. So it's definitely a noble cause, and I really like sort of what you're doing there, because leaving the world in a better place than you left it is part of our goal as humans, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's ultimately it, right? Everything we do is for the next generation. Like everything that we should do is for the next generation. It's funny to say intergenerational wealth, because I think when I think about intergenerational wealth, the truth of the matter is we all need money.
True.
And that's the truth, right? And I don't want to, part of, life lessons are important to pass down to the next generation. Various different knowledge and education and all those things. But understand that you got to be able to build some capital when you're trying to pushing generations forward. Because again, that's and I think that's all great. And I think you having those lessons and you having those experiences and having those relationships all pushes generations forward. But it is helpful. It is helpful too when you can pass down capital to the next generation. And so, like, for me as a professional, like, I gotta work. I gotta be paid, because you know what I'm saying. Like, I love the feel good stories, and I love all those things, and I love being able to pass down knowledge. But again, I want to be able to leave my children with a really good start in life.
Yeah.
As adults, right? One of my biggest fears, I do everything I can to avoid this, to make sure this never happens. But I don't when it comes time to bury me, or when it comes time to my children to bury me, I don't want a GoFundMe account. There's nothing wrong with people who do that, but for me, I want my children to be able to access this money so they can bury me properly and then have no other worries.
Yeah.
And that's important to me, but that starts with understanding wealth and understanding that wealth is important to the next generation, and passing down of that wealth is essential. But for people who don't have it or don't have that wealth and who don't see themselves as someone who can pass that down, that is okay too, because your lessons will help that young person get their wealth.
Yeah.
Your relationships and your guidance and your coaching will help that young person or help that your child get that wealth, right? But again, wealth is nice to have to pass down to as well.
Yeah, I like how you sort of did both sides though as well, because wealth is great, but obviously not everyone has it, and it's dispersed, and it's with certain, and it's either with certain top 1% or things and this and that, or it's just not spread out evenly or fairly or equitably.
Yeah.
My brain is slowing down today. I've had a long weekend.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed the conversation so far. It's been good. Been a good little brain teaser.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I think as you're saying there, obviously both is ideal, but at least if you're giving one, it's going to then, as you're saying, giving them the platform to then go for themselves to build their wealth. And then hopefully they have both. And then they pass that on to their grandchildren, who now sort of have that, like they've got the best of both worlds, haven't they, with that?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's an important one as well.
Yeah.
Because it's necessary. It's necessary, isn't it?
It's the free market dream. Like we call it here in America, the American dream. But it's the free market dream. Like it's where you could pass down these things to your children so that they can be sustained. That's it.
No,
that's it. That's it. That's it.
I wanted to just ask you two more questions.
Yeah.
And I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation that we've had. For you, what would you say is sort of like, what are your hopes and your aspirations for the book, but also like just for the mission that you're on, that you're wanting to achieve?
Yeah, I think most importantly, like I really want people to find purpose to the next generation. That's it. I really want people like, we're in this in today's climate, like everything's about, you hear left versus right, you'll hear conservative versus liberal, you'll hear Democratic versus Republican. I'm not sure how you all say it there, but you have
all the divides.
It's the things that divide us, all the things that divide us. Like one hot button thing you see here is "Make America Great Again." You have all those things that that comes up with different feelings and different things, and I think that's okay. I mean, I think it's divisive as it is, and I think those things have a place for certain people. But for me, and for this book, I'm about making America. I'm about making this world a better place. I'm about making America a better place, right? And how do we do that? To the next generation. Like understanding that our choices impact the next generation. Everything we do matters to the next generation. And so therefore, I'm going to do everything I can to set the next generation up for success. And that's what this book is all about. Like how can we do that on an individual scale? How can we do that on a family scale, a community scale, a country scale, and then the world scale? Like how can we do that? Right? I think if everyone got on the same page of pushing generations forward, we might see a lot less divide. Because everything's about community. Everything's about the next generation. Everything's about finding ways for the next generation to be better. Because I mean, 80 years from now, I won't be here. But I think it would be good for me to know that I try my best to make this world a better place.
Yeah, definitely. Leaving your footprint, isn't it? Like, we never know as well, like the things that we do, the people that we interact with, the people that we help and support, especially in social care settings, as you're saying at the start, like kids were telling you, "Oh, I've graduated now. I want to be like you. You really helped me, and you've given me a good relationship." That is a huge thing for that person. It seems so small to us because it was our jobs, and at the end of the day, we got paid for it.
Yeah.
And I only saw you, once every an hour each week, but to them it was everything.
Yeah.
And it changed their lives. So like, it's a really good imprint to have on the world as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's important. That's important because money, you can't take money with you. So why not pass it down to the next generation? You can't take the knowledge when you leave this world. You can't take wealth. You can't take knowledge. You can't take anything with you. So why not pass it down to the next generation?
Yeah, 100%. And even when you were saying that, like, our choices have consequences, I remember like hearing stuff about global warming and how Shell and BP in like the late 80s and 90s put out posts in newspapers to say, no, climate change isn't real or anything else like that. But like something as simple as them doing something different and acknowledging that actually, no, it is real and we probably do need to do something about it. We wouldn't have been having these conversations now about how do we get to, I forgot what the target is, but how do we get to the Paris climate targets and stuff like that? And we could have been having these conversations earlier, which would have been better for the future. So just something as small as that, like you would never think, just how they controlled the media to make everyone sort of forget about it is now led to such, not drastic, but I mean, it could be drastic outcomes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because based on our economy, based on obtaining as much money as you can, it's not really about on a global scale. It's not really about today. Like for some, I wouldn't say for all people, but for a lot of people, it's about. I mean, it's not really about tomorrow. It's about today, right? How can I today get what I can get, so I can get what I can get, and so I can get what I need to do and do what I need to do. And a lot of choices has everything to do with, like, you think about investors. Like, it's financially speaking. Like, you think about investors. The overall goal is to maximize shareholders' value, right? And so as long as the shareholders' values are maximized, then everything's okay. I don't need to do anything else, right? But what about the shareholders' values are high, but our climate is suffering because of that. It doesn't really matter anymore, right? Because as long as my shareholders are happy, nothing else matters. And it's about today, right? It's about today, what we're seeing today, and not about what tomorrow might bring. And so, I look at it that way too as well, because I think we have to have those conversations. We have to be able to talk about how are we leaving our world to our kids. Because I can pass down millions of dollars, but the world
will that be gone?
The world's gone, and climate crisis. What's the point? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah,
it's one of the ones.
Thanks.
Sometimes you can only just laugh, can't you?
You can.
So say if there's this is a final question I ask all my guests. Say if there's a young Black boy sort of listening to this conversation, how do you think something that you know or something that we've talked about like help them with an understanding of themselves?
Yeah, I think for the most part, kid or young man or whoever you are, I think, you got to understand one thing. Everything you do matters for the next generation. So I know in life you've made some mistakes. I know in life that life hasn't been fair. There are a lot of people who hurt you. There have been times when you've hurt yourself. Whether that emotionally, physically, or psychologically, all those ways. And I know that you probably experienced some trauma. You probably experienced a lot of different things in life, and it's been tough. But I promise you, if you can take on the mentality of pushing the generations forward, it won't be easy, but it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it because you'll know that whatever you've gone through, whatever you're going through right now, your children will never go through. And if you can realize that, your impact for the next generation will be huge. Your impact for your grandchildren will be huge. Your impact for your great great grandchildren will be huge. All because you decided that I'm gonna, despite all of those things that have happened to me, despite all the things I've endured, I'm gonna push generations forward, no matter what. And it's empowering, and you can do it.
No, bro. I'm gonna let the audience simmer onto that one. And yeah, Kwame, thank you very much for joining me on this Sunday. I know Sunday's not always the best. There's a Super Bowl on, I know.
Yeah.
And my voice is croaking over here from at a wedding over the weekend. So yeah, no, it's been good. It's been good. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, man. I know, Tino, thanks so much for having me, man. This is a great conversation, man. I feel like we could talk more for 4 or 5 more hours.
Definitely.
You know,
That just means part 2, though.
Yeah, right. I want to remind the listeners real quick that Pushing the Generations Forward book is out. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on Walmart.com, BarnesandNoble.com. You can also go to my website at pushingthegenerationsforward.com. That's pushingthegenerationsforward.com. You can find the book there too as well. Also with some swag, some t-shirts, all those things there as well. So to make sure I plug that.
Now you got to, mate. You've got to plug it. It's part of the point you're coming on as well, isn't it?
Right.
We talked about it. We talked about it. People need to know where to read it. That's what we're gonna do. Exactly. Yeah, I'll also put it into the show notes as well for anybody listening. So, and for those on YouTube as well, they'll be in the comments, so you'll be able to find it. You'll be able to find it. You got no excuse now. You know where to go. No, you've seen Kwame's face. You've heard his voice. Yeah. There's no excuse.
We're there. Thanks, man. Yeah, I appreciate that.
That was good. It's good. So yeah. No, thank you for joining me, Kwame, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, man.
All right.
Thanks.
Bless.
So that is the end of the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed talking with Kwame. I think that a lot of the stuff that we talked about, as I said before, aligns with the mission of Black and Raw, and hearing about how he is influencing the next generation of leaders, doctors, social workers, artists, creatives, empowering young people with the tools to be able to thrive in their older life, I think is something that we all should be striving towards. And I really thank Kwame for doing that work and continuing to do that work. If you want to find his book, it's going to be in the show notes. So Pushing the Generation Forward by Kwame Harris. So you like we said in the video, you've got no excuse. It's all going to be there for you. I'm going to put some additional resources up as well about relationship-based practice, about different stages of change on my website. So go check that out, www.blackandroll.co.uk. So thank you very much for listening and watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you put some comments into the comment section and tell me what you thought, please like and subscribe as well. I know I've just asked a lot from you, but I would really appreciate it. So yeah, thank you very much, guys. There'll be a new episode out next week, and we will talk soon.